Welcome to another tantalizing edition of the Nine Questions. I am honored to play host to Lisa Wagoner. She's a friend of mine. We've known each other for years, and I'm excited to have her on here and share with us some of her knowledge. She's a writer and author of a wonderful book called Positive Pagan. I've read it, love it. You need it in your library. She's a healing guide, teacher, coach. She lives kind of close to where I grew up in western part of North Carolina, Asheville area. A devoted follower of the goddess Brigid. She offers one-on-one readings, coaching, healing sessions, and workshops, and can usually be found outside tending her home wildlife, which there's a lot of in that area. Yeah. And she's doing an exciting project in which we'll talk about a little bit, her Substack, opener of stuck spaces. And she's very passionate about herbalism, the worldwide community as a whole, and words. Words mean stuff.
They do.
Welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
All right. So let's just jump in.
Forward to this. So yeah.
Yes. Because we have some mutual our circles overlap.
Yes.
So what are you most curious about now? Let's just jump right on in there and let's just get to it.
Yeah, well, it was interesting because I was like, well, is that like personal hobbies but I think the thing I'm most curious about at this moment is how 2024 will unfold, because I felt like, at least for me, last year was a really hard year on so many levels. And yeah. And it just felt like, I don't know if you felt this way too, but it felt like when we got to New Year's Eve, it was like we just sort of limped to the finish line. Like it was a very low key. Everybody was like, yeah, okay, the end of the year. And then it was really interesting. The next morning I woke up, and for myself personally, I felt like a real physical shift where I was like, I got clarity, I didn't feel quite so exhausted and worn out. And I've noticed other people, they're all full of like ideas and, forging ahead with their, see the little metal notice there, forging ahead with their plans and dreams and things. And that energy, I've noticed, even though like the world is so horrific, it's like I've noticed that energy is really bubbling up. So I'm really curious like how this year will unfold.
Yes, may it unfold.
Yes, yeah, may it unfold. Well, and the other thing is too, Mercury in retrograde ended on January 1st, and that was not lost on me. So I'm sort of wondering if it's like, planetary wise, I'm not an astrologer or anything, but there are so many things that it's like things will shift, and Pluto and all these things that I can't quite comprehend. But I just feel like this year it's almost like we're on parallel tracks. Like the world is horrific, but there's all these really amazing things happening. So
there's definitely, I think there's an undercurrent of I liked your phrasing of unfolding, because it felt like last year to me anyway was like it was like an origami ball.
Yes.
One of those you make in school and you fold up and you go, and it finally blows up,
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's unfold, let's open things up. I think a lot of times we, especially with the pandemic, we got to the point where we were all in these little bitty silos.
Yeah.
And I think, it's a very apt description that you came up with, because I think it's, we are reconnecting.
Yes.
I think, and I think, I'm seeing it where there's less gatekeeping.
Oh,
maybe it's just me, to where I just don't tolerate it.
Exactly. Same. Yeah.
Maybe that's it. I'm old, so I have a lot of that get off my lawn kind of attitude anyway.
Yeah.
I've got wounds. I can afford to be like that. But, but I do think people are starting to, I'm not sure this is the right word, but homogenize. We're trying to figure out our commonalities.
Yes.
What can we agree on? Yeah. All right. We don't agree on any of this other stuff, but how can we make this work?
Yeah.
I'm hoping that is what 2024 is because there's enough of us against them in daily, hourly, overrun, so I'm ready to, let's see how we can make this work. Anyway, all right. So
I agree. Yeah, definitely.
So if you could only recommend 3 books what would they be and why?
Well, I have to laugh because I'm going to recommend my book and your book, so that's 2 out of 3. And I'm not just saying
it's almost cheating, isn't it?
Yeah, but I'm not just saying your book just because I'm on here, because I genuinely do enjoy your book, because I think the main thing I learned from you was that, you know, a metal is so inherent in our life, and that really woke me up to be more observant of how much metal is in our life, and especially being devoted to Brigid, who, you know, is a goddess of blacksmithing. It just I have a new appreciation for it. So, and then my book, just because I wrote it to help people, and I really want it to help people. And I think there's a lot of wounded people out there, and a lot of people have been through some things, and I hope my book helps. But
and I want to pause right here, because I cannot praise your book enough, because it's, you know, the cool thing about it is, yeah, you can read it cover to cover, but you can also just, you know, I'm having a crappy day and just open it up, and there's an exercise that's easy and quick. You don't have to go get stuff to do it.
Yeah.
you know,
I wrote it like that because that's what I like to do. I just like to randomly open a book, and I really wrote it with that intention in mind. So I'm so glad so many people tell me that that's what they do. And because I wanted it to be like, you know, just there's just times where you just can't reach out to a friend, or you can't do something. And I wanted like my book to just be there for you. And then you just randomly open it, and hopefully, because I feel like action gets you out of whatever is going on with you and then moves you forward, because we always want to keep moving forward in life in so many ways. So thank you. I appreciate that. And the other book is, you know, I've really been thinking a lot about Scott Cunningham lately. I know that book just came out by his sister, Chris, I think it's Christine Ashworth. And I was thinking back to, I mean, he certainly wasn't the first like magical book I read, but I just remember that feeling of, and it's funny you mentioned that like lessening of gatekeeping, because I always felt like he was just so welcoming in his book. And, you know, same thing that I like really admire, that he just set forth like, here's what you do, here's what you can do. And it was welcoming and accepting. And I really appreciate that. So a lot of times I go back to his books because I just feel like it's prolific what he put out before he unfortunately passed away. And it just feels like a hug, you know, when I read his book, because it's like, yes, he's one of us, you know, we're one of his, you know, that kind of thing. So
that's kind of funny, because I've actually the last couple of weeks have circled back to some of his stuff that I've gotten, you know, that
nice.
have, you know, kind of been set on the side, you know, because it's Cunningham. Yeah. You know, but back when I started 30 years ago, that was it. You know, I mean, he was, you know, the dude. And he it was a wealth of information. It's like you said, it wasn't, you know, you've got to do it this way and stand this way with this thing and that hand on this day at this hour. You know, it wasn't any of that. And it was very much just, you know, whatever you got, you know, grab some dirt, spit in it, you know.
Exactly.
You know?
I think one of the most poignant parts he wrote, I think, was like he was either in his room at home or in a hotel room or something, and he didn't really have anything, and how he made do. And that just really spoke to me, because I just felt like, wow, you know, it's all around us, and we can make do because we are the magic, basically. And I love how, you know, he was just so welcoming, like, you know, like how some people sort of talk down. He was just like, no, you're a friend. Let me tell you how this is done. And it was just so welcoming. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Yes. I think he's overlooked a lot now, you know.
I know a lot of people consider him problematic. And, you know, if you consider like the time period he wrote it in, or that, you know, it's patriarchal, or, you know, he's a guy or whatever, it's more the tone of the books, and you could just feel like his eagerness to share this knowledge with you, which I don't necessarily find in books.
Things have changed in 30 years.
Yeah.
Not all of them good.
Yeah.
You know, we haven't really, you know, there are a lot of, we still have some improvement to go along our human path. And, you know, I think just because, you know, I don't know. All right. So I'm get off my lawn, you know.
Get off my lawn too.
my books, not yours, not your cow, my books. All right. So this is something that I've struggled with, and I'm going to be full disclosure for the last year is, what gives you motivation to keep doing what it is that you do? You know, because I know, you know, being an author and being out in the community, you know, you've got a spotlight on you,
Yeah.
lack of a better word. I mean, people see you, right?
Yeah.
And you can't always hide behind Instagram, because there's
Right.
like people. So how do you stay motivated? What gives you the drive?
What helps me stay motivated is that one person that sends me, like a message or an email that says, you really helped me with this, or you said something the other day that really stuck with me, or, I never thought of things that way, and you helped me to see a different way. That is my motivation. That's what gets me up every single day, because it's a passion of mine, because I had a really, on some levels, a really difficult childhood and adolescence and, early adulthood, and have been through some things. And so it's just a real passion of mine to help people, that are stuck in the middle of their own horrific life or, circumstances, and to tell you, look, you can get through this. And, this is how, here's some ways you can do it. And then just let them know that they're not alone, because that's like a passion for mine. I hate it when people feel like they're all alone in the world, and it's just like, you're not. There are people who care about you, and it's hard, like when you're in the middle of everything, to think that there are other people out there who care. But yeah, sometimes I'm caught off guard too when someone says, oh my gosh, this reading you did for me it changed my life. Or, like you said, when I open your book, and this exercise really helped me, because that's really important to me.
Serving others
Yeah.
motivates.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what gets me out of bed every single day.
Wow, that's something. I wish, yeah. It's different when you look at your work with a capital W as an act of service,
Yeah.
versus a vocation.
Yes.
There's a different energy to it. I've done it both ways, and I can tell you that for me, it's much more satisfying. Might not be as prosperous, depending on your, how you're gauging prosper, right? Because there's, everybody, words mean stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it depends on. But I think if more, okay, this is a judgment, I'm gonna lay it out there because that's just kind of how I am. But if more people spent more time serving others versus trying to figure themselves out all the time,
Right.
I think things would be more harmonious.
Yes.
I can't.
Right.
I'm Appalachian. I don't speak English.
Well, and also, and it's something I discovered, and I wrote about it too, and that I observed in my life, is that people with a lot of like mental issues and things like that, they're just constantly thinking about themselves. And so I just thought of it very simply, like, well, and I do it myself. So like every day, like to start my day, like I started this during COVID, and it's definitely helped, and I highly recommend it, is like I check on 3 people a day. And so it gets me out of like me, which, we're human, we do this, and no judgment about that, but
I'm
helps.
writing that down.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Check on
And
3
it
people
could
a
be
day.
something simple like a text. I have some pen pals, or I'll write a letter or send an email and just say, hey, I was thinking about you. Because and a lot of times, because I'm an intuitive, it'll be like, holy crap, I was just thinking about you. And I was like, yeah, that happens. Like I'll feel a nudge, and it'll be like, oh, I need to check on this person today. So it's just something that's part of like my daily routine. And then I also, like, I have plants, and so you have to water the plants, and then I feed birds, my little wildlife sanctuary I have outside. That gives me so much joy. And so I feed the birds outside, make sure they have water, watch the squirrels, that kind of thing, the occasional bear that goes by. So yeah, that gets me out of myself and out of that mental spiral of like, oh my gosh, what should I be doing? It's it's all about me. And it helps. It really helps a lot.
And I know we all have trauma.
Yeah.
Right? It's one thing I've learned in the last 5 years or so, is that we all have trauma, and you can't grade it because it's trauma.
Yeah. Exactly.
And your trauma is going to be different than my trauma, but it doesn't make it any better or worse for what I'm doing. Right?
Exactly.
So I think, I would find it very refreshing if we quit trying to figure out who was the most damaged. You know,
Excellent
but
point. Yeah.
give everybody a participation trophy and let's move the fuck on. Sorry. We're all fucked up. Let's do,
Exactly.
now what do we do?
Yeah.
Because I think so much people are just trying to figure, because life is hard.
It is.
And depending on what generation you grew up in, the heart is different.
Yeah.
And I think if we spent more time, I like this, check on 3 people a day and more focused on being in service.
Yeah.
Versus it having ulterior motivation, Yeah, I like that. I'm adding that in somewhere.
Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you.
I like that. No, I really like that.
Yeah.
Because I get, through everything that I've gone through, I get people that do that. And I've kind of, okay, that's kind of cool, but I really wasn't paying attention to what it was.
Yeah.
Right. It was just, yeah. So I like that. It has made a difference, especially because those days that just, there are some days that just suck.
Yeah.
You wake up and you go, oh man, the day's gone, and it just, life just like that. Something, it's not always, rainbows and unicorns and kumbaya,
not at all.
There are just days that, are just, I don't want to, I'm just going to, take me a Nitol and go back to bed.
Exactly.
And
there's nothing wrong with that.
Like.
Yeah.
we're gonna punt, punt's not always, anyway. All right. So what's one piece of advice that you would give when somebody's just starting a pagan path? I'm going to use pagan as an umbrella term that encompasses earth-based spirituality, and it's not a judgment, and I'm not trying to omit anybody. I'm just using it because it's my words are easier that way. So if somebody was coming to you and say, all right, what do I need to do? What do you tell them?
Well, I had to laugh because the first thing I thought of was like, you don't have to buy all the things, because I know, I'm guilty of that. And then that's like one of my joys is like, shopping online for metaphysical things. But you don't have to buy all of them. And I think sometimes people get caught up in, I have to have, the right tools, and I have to have this, and I have to have that. And then circling back to Scott Cunningham, I think that's the lesson that stuck with me, was that you don't really need a lot of elaborate stuff. And it's great if you do. If you want to have a bajillion statues, go for it. But you don't need it, that you yourself are the magic, because you have to get yourself straight first before you can practice. And I think honestly, a lot of people, instead of trying to face themselves, they get distracted by other things. And sometimes it's paganism or witchcraft. And it's just like, make sure you're okay with yourself first before you start dealing with energies and things that are beyond the human sphere in a way. So that would be the main thing. So because I don't want people to feel like, oh gosh, I have to have this deck or that statue or this tool, and it's great, but and having worked in metaphysical shops, I get it. It's very enticing, but I do want people to keep that in the back of their mind that you're the magic.
Patience.
That
would be mine.
I love that.
I don't have it.
Yeah.
I've been taught that, and I'm still learning.
Oh yeah. It's a lifelong lesson. Yeah.
I'm still learning it, but because we're not patient. A 2-day Amazon order is just,
that's excruciating.
It's like, I need it now. What do you mean take me 2 days? I can drive over there and get it by,
I love that. Yeah. That's really good, because that's the other thing. People get frustrated and they give up because it's like, nothing's happened. I have to give this up and let me try something else. And it's just like, no, it does take time. It really does. And then like when you look back, and I think I call it in the book, like a trail of breadcrumbs, you will see like how, even though you thought nothing was happening, if you look back, whoa, look, this connected to this, and this happened because of this. And it's a magical thing. It's worth the wait.
I think community is important.
Yeah.
But once again, back to the, how do you gauge the right community?
Right.
But no matter where you are, that's where you need to be.
Yeah.
That's kind of my philosophy, because you're going to learn something, even if it's excruciating.
Yeah.
It is also important to learn what not to do.
Exactly.
So you don't have to do that anymore, or wonder if it needs to be done, I know in my craft, that's how I learned most everything. Okay,
Mhm.
well, that didn't work out the way I wanted it to, but hey, look what I made.
Yeah.
That's how you do that.
Yeah.
Whew. All right. So you're writing a book. What happened that you least expected?
Yeah, there's so many stories about that. Well, the main one was when I started the book. Well, there's two things. One, how incredibly hard it is. Because I always said, oh, I have a book in me. Like all I have to do is just unleash it. And it's so hard to write 50 to 60,000 words. It's not as easy as you think it is. So that was one thing, how much work is involved, which is well worth it. But then the other part of it, what was really interesting is like I started that book with the whole me of like, oh, this is a fulfillment of a lifelong dream, and it's all about me, and this is an
And I'm going on
accomplishment.
tour and
Yeah, it's an accomplishment.
taking it on the road.
Yeah, and so what happened is, and I discussed this in the introduction, is like in the editing process, I have a seasonal affective disorder, and it hit me really hard that I completely stopped. So it's like a miracle the book did get published because I was just like, I can't do this. Like, why, Brigid, why did you tell me to write this book? I cannot do it. I have nothing to say. Why would you do this to me? But what happened was, I was like, hey, I wrote a whole book about this. Like, action moves you forward. And I started really methodically working through my book. And then the focus of it shifted to truly, I wanted to help people because I was just like, everything in that book, I've done myself and experienced myself. I know what it's like to not be able to get out of bed. And so the whole purpose of it shifted. And it was, and I'm really thankful for it because it's like I didn't write it for accolades or to get followers. I truly wrote it to help people. So if it's not a New York Times bestseller, which it's not, it's fine. But the people that it has touched, that means the world to me. Because I have gotten so many like emails and messages about like, thank you, because this helped. And so that means a whole lot to me. And that's what was an interesting shift. So as I'm working on my next book, I'm thinking like, okay,
Wait, you're working on another one?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I didn't
Yeah.
know this.
Yeah. No, I have like always a couple of projects in mind, but we'll see, how they turn out. But yeah, it was very interesting to have that shift happen. I'm really thankful for it because, you can get caught up like how many copies were sold and why doesn't that bookstore have my book? But I realize my shift is different because again, it's outside of me. It is like, well, it needs to be where it will help people. So, and I've been pleasantly surprised where I see it pop up. It's like, oh, thanks, So
Yeah, that's gotta feel good. To
yeah.
walk in a store and see your book, go, hey,
Yeah.
that's me.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
So as an author and intuitive and all the things that you do, what do you think people misunderstand about you the most?
Oh, yeah, that's one of my favorite questions that you asked. Because I was raised with an emphasis on politeness. So I am a very polite person. And so when you meet me, like 9 times out of 10, people walk away from me going, oh, she's so sweet. She's so nice. And I am, but I have very, very strong boundaries. And I think that startles people because like I'm very protective of my energy. And so that's what they misunderstand. And so I think, they get lulled with the, oh, she's so nice, but oh, wait, why is she not accessible 24/7? And I was like, no, I'm very firm about that. And some people take it the wrong way because I think a lot of people are like that, accessible all the time. And I'm just not. And so, but I am still a very nice and sweet person.
You are. I will say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So working with community as much as you have and seeing things from a distance at times and from being a part of it, what do you think people get wrong?
People get wrong about community?
Yeah, about what it's about, what's going on, and even the I know it's kind of a really broad question, but what do you see people maybe misunderstanding?
I think people maybe misunderstand like how much work is involved as far as like community rituals and things like that. And that part I think is challenging, because I think people just show up and expect to be entertained and or feel something, or feel one with the universe, or feel an instant part of the community. And I think people don't realize that it takes work. Like, I was at one of those events like in Florida, was it last year or the year before? And I realized sort of, and that this is a concern of mine, that large events, the majority of people that were doing the work were over like 65 and very spry and energetic and lovely. But then they're dropped off. Like, there were people like in their 50s, and then some people in their 40s, and then that was it. There was no like younger people helping and doing the actual physical work. And that is a concern, because it's like they show up and they expect to be entertained, and they're like, "Oh, I see ya." And then the older people, our elders, they're doing the setup, they're arranging the ritual, they're making sure you're fed, they're doing all the things. And I think that's like a worldwide concern, because it's like, who does the work? Like, we don't have time to like volunteer and help. And so I'm concerned about that. Like, what will that look like, like maybe 10 years from now,
Because our communities have gotten so technical, right? They're
Right.
all, over the internet, right?
Mhm.
I mean, the community, because I got friends that are in Ireland, and,
Yeah,
they're
me
all
too,
over,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So there's that, which is a blessing.
It is.
But it's like you said, there's no substitute, my opinion, I'm judging.
Yeah.
There's no substitute for that elbow to elbow
Yeah.
ritual or gathering, even, the breaking of bread, the sharing of space. There's no substitute for that. And
Yeah.
like you said, there's us old timers, and then there's not a lot else.
Yeah.
I remember I learned a very valuable lesson when I was vice president of Cups. My president, she was wonderful, just very wise. And anybody that brought an idea to her, hey, why don't we do this? Her first response was, "That's a great idea. Let me know how that works out."
Yeah. And then people stop, right?
It's your idea. You get the work.
Yeah.
And I thought,
Yeah.
wow, how brilliant is that? Right.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot from that, because from that, one, be careful what you say.
Exactly.
You're liable to get stuck doing the work,
Yeah.
but two, you're giving people permission to be involved.
Right.
Because I think also with that, people running things there's the control part of it.
Yep.
Right. And it's not giving up control for someone else, or even asking for help.
Right.
Because, once again, my generation, you ask for help, it's a weakness. It's not a,
Right.
and it's something that I'm currently in the middle of. Right. So we got to figure that out, because, when I go on, I want others to keep going.
Right.
I don't want things to become stagnant and just fizzle.
Right.
I've worked way too hard for it to just fizzle.
Yeah.
Just for what that's anyway.
All right, yeah, that's why, I wrote like worldwide community is important to me, because I feel like we can connect, like you said, you have friends in Ireland, and so do I, and I feel really connected to them. So thanks to the power of technology, maybe that's what happens, is that we end up on Zoom calls, or, not necessarily meet in person. We need to think about that, like, because how are we going to continue this? Because I don't think people are giving that any thought, because like, if you step back and observe, like I said, most of the work is being done by our elders, and sometimes you're right, like, they're control freaks and they won't let you do the work, and they won't take your ideas and stuff like that. But they need to think about it too. Like, what's the next steps? What's our legacy? What are we working on, so that we can continue this kind of, magic of being together.
Yeah, so nobody's doing succession planning.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And it was really interesting, because one of the messages I got from last year was just like this constant going back to, like, for myself personally, it was like my community. So I live in South Asheville, which, it's like it's just different from, the other. Asheville has lots of different parts. And I have just been really told over and over again to put roots down in my community, like where I live, kind of thing. And so I'm following that message and seeing what I can do, for the people in, the area I live in. So,
well, getting back to, I think COVID didn't help us.
No.
helped in a lot of ways, and it
Yeah.
also didn't, right?
Yeah. We're a nation of introverts. So,
So I think we've really got to, I would like to see there be more in-person gatherings, not at festivals gatherings.
yeah. I
Festivals are
agree.
important. It's a great way to meet and greet. You get to see, people that you admire and if,
Yeah.
followed from a distance or whatever, and you can actually kind of share space with them. But the sharing of space is so cool,
Yeah.
right? And, once again, who's going to do it, right? So I got to be careful with bringing up the idea because then I'm going to be stuck doing it. And I guess I have
Exactly.
enough. But
Yeah.
it would be nice to go visit.
Yeah. Yeah,
Somebody else's
and it
work.
does take a lot of work. I mean, just like doing like a 1 day festival, when you think about it, I never even thought about like insurance and and just the minutia of organizing all the people and what they sell and the paperwork, and it is a lot of work. So I
Who's
understand.
taking
And
the trash out?
yeah,
Who's
yeah. So I
what about
understand.
the
So
porta
like,
potties? Who's got,
yeah. Yeah, so for me personally, my solution is just do what I can where I can, kind of thing. And I think if all of us did that, maybe we could get back to, maybe like a ripple effect. So
Let's do that. Let's see what we can figure out. We'll talk about that.
absolutely.
So what's the most interesting, wonderful place that you visited?
Well, been through quite a few places, but I have to say Belfast. Yeah, I went
Oh,
to
wow. Yeah.
Belfast for a couple of times, and there's something about Northern Ireland that I just found strangely familiar. And I'm not even remotely like Irish. I have like zero Irish in me. Uh and I think it's because the connection with Brigid, and it was just really interesting. Beautiful place, great sense of humor, feeling really comfortable, a lot of history. Yeah, and just a palpable connection that I have. It was some of the most amazing times I've been there.
I want to go back. Now that I know more,
Yeah.
that's the whole, I was over there in the service,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and at 19,
Yeah,
there were other things I was more focused on. We'll just leave
absolutely.
it
Yeah.
at that.
Yeah.
I'd like to go back and see if I could, but yes, yes. All right. So we've talked about it a couple of times, but I'm going to circle back to it. What is one thing that we can do individually to help our communities thrive? And community, I mean, I want to specifically talk about local community.
What
So
can we
what's one
do?
thing that we can do?
I wish I had the answer to that. I'm not sure
Well,
I
I'm hoping
do.
somebody does. That's why I
But
keep asking
yeah,
it.
like I said, I think do what you can when you can. I think nowadays we don't have time. We're like exhausted and frazzled, and have a lot of mental concerns, mental issues that we're all going through. And so I want people to do what they can where they can. So whether it is something simple, and that's the main thought I want to get across is like, I think a lot of people get overwhelmed at the thought, like, what I do won't make a difference because I'm one person. And I disagree with that hugely. And I think I'm a real big believer. I think a long time ago, I read, in Voltaire or something. I remember like I was in school and I read this, and it's like, if everybody tended to their garden, the whole world would be, full of beautiful gardens. I'm paraphrasing. And that really stuck with me as a kid. And I just remember thinking that's my philosophy of life. It's like I tend really well to my own garden. And then hopefully, my next door neighbor will tend to their garden, and that will be like a ripple effect. So I do think that people need to get over thinking, oh, I can't make a difference, because I really think one person can. So I hope that helps. And I hope, it could be something as simple as like maybe starting like a food drive, for your local community, or offering to, host a ritual, like for example, and this just happened this week, was I have a local metaphysical shop near my house that I go to. And I realized that they didn't have like an Imbolc celebration. And so I was just like, hey, do you want me to do this? This isn't about me like trying to get followers, or, I really genuinely want to help. And I was like, look, if you don't do this, because they're sort of like more of a new age, they straddled the line kind of thing. And and I'm open to that too. So I said, hey, would this be of interest? I would like to do that. And they were just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Thank you so much. And I'm just so excited about that, because it can be, for the local community. One person can show up and that would make me happy, so.
What's that old saying, 'cause I go back to it all the time because it's one of those things that just really made an impact. It's the sand dollar story, where the kid's walking along and all the sand dollars are washed up and he's picking them up and throwing them back in the,
Oh yeah, the
the guy,
starfish. Yeah, I
the
learned this with
starfish,
starfish.
sand dollar,
Yeah, yeah,
starfish, whatever.
yeah.
Um, and that
I
story has
was,
always made a big difference. Where I'm like,
yeah.
all right, well, it made a difference to that one,
Yes,
and if who knows what that one turns out to be.
absolutely.
What impact, because I know I've had those people that have had huge impacts on my life, and without them, where would I be?
Yeah,
So I have to
yeah.
kind of keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, and
All
I
right,
think
so
as humans too, I think we give ourselves a hard time, because you have to be content with what you can do. Like do what you can when you can. Like, I mean, I think that's what stops people is like, oh, I can't lead ritual or I'm too shy to do this. Like, well, then start like a food drive or, donate books to your local prison ministry because, there's pagans in prison, little things you can do that can help.
and I remember when I once again being starting out, I started out with just calling the quarter,
Yeah.
calling the direction,
Yeah.
and just being an active participant,
Yeah.
instead of just hanging out. But those were most that I was involved with back then. They were all participatory anyway. It wasn't dinner and a show. No matter what, you worked when you
Yeah.
got there. It
Exactly.
wasn't, entertainment necessarily. Anyway, so what's the question I should have asked you that I didn't?
Oh, let's see. Did I write down any notes? Ask me my favorite moments of 2023 because I have a good one.
Okay, yeah. What is your favorite moment of 2020? Please give us give us something good.
Well, yeah. Well, it was really interesting because it was, I think, right before you reached out to me to do this, and like I said, I sort of limped to the end of 2023 and I did a lot of online stuff last year as far as like symposiums and uh, online, conferences and things like that, which I'm always honored to do. And I took part in a Bewitching the Water symposium, which was like international. And I had gotten like the Friday 4:30 slot. So when I got that, I was like, oh, everybody's going to be getting ready for dinner or, they'll be commuting or, they'll be busy. So everybody will watch it on a replay. And so in a way that relaxed me because I thought, oh, nobody's going to be watching. And it was really cool because I have a creek outside my home and I consider myself like the water priestess of the creek, and which has been really helpful because we've had like developers come in and I've been working with Brigid to sort of keep them at bay and all kinds of really fun, amazing stuff. And I ended up doing my talk on creek magic, which I mean, I'm hardly the expert, but it was basically just talking about all the stuff that I'd done. I mean, I've always been playing in creeks since I was a kid. I just love water. I'm Pisces. So I talked on creek magic and it was so cool because I forgot this was an international symposium. And so people were like in different time zones and they actively participated. And talk about community. It was just like I'd been so like in my head and so like removed from like physical group things or even online things that had been like a couple of months since like the last conference, and it was amazing. And I got such great like interaction, like, oh my gosh, hadn't thought about that, or how about this for creek magic, and it was just really cool. So I urge people to like, I know people get sick of Zoom calls and conferences and things like that, but if you don't have one in your area, I really encourage you to sign up for like at least one of those online because they're so much fun.
And you learn a lot, and you get, once again, your community kind of broadens.
Absolutely. Like people I admire had the other sessions and oh my gosh, I learned so much. It was amazing.
Water is important. In fact, when we moved here, I told my wife that I only got two things I got to have. I got to have a fireplace and I got to have a creek. That's
Yes.
it. Other than that, I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
got to have
Mine
running
was
water and
trees and a
fireplace.
creek and I got that. So yeah.
I'm good. I got to have a creek. So
Yeah.
I totally get that,
Yeah.
totally get that. All right. So is there anything you'd like to ask me before we?
Yes, I would love to ask you, and you may have answered this before, but what is your favorite metal or favorites if you have more than one?
Well, I work with the four, pretty regularly. I think it depends, right? Because I think it depends on what I'm doing,
Right.
right? Because they all have such unique personalities. I have found lately, I've had I've had a closer relationship with copper than I have had in the past. But I think a lot of that is because of my own personal journey and needing that conduit, right? You got to have, and copper is very healing, because it's a natural microbial, so that's, it naturally doesn't, icky stuff doesn't stick to it,
Something else I learned from you. I did not know that before. So that's very cool.
So I think that copper has, if you've looked at my work over the last year, most of it has been copper. A lot of it has been copper, because I think it's my work is a reflection, I think, a lot of where I am. Right. Okay. And I think, which I think is kind of cool, because I can look back and go, okay, yeah, I look at the different moonblings that I'm doing throughout the year and go, okay, that's what I'm working through. That's what I'm working through. That's what I'm working through. A lot of times, or, some of them will be some ideas too, that people go, hey, do you have anything that'll help with X, Y, Z?
Right.
Okay, let me marinate on that a while, and I'll come up with something. But copper has been, it's been kind of a friend over this last year, because it is that very healing, has that kind of, it's transference of energy, right? Because our wiring in our house is made out of copper. So I think it's a lot of that, just, I don't have it, so it's an easy way for me to get it, right? If that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, because one of my favorite items from your shop is I have the copper like offering bowl on my Brigid altar. So yeah, I was just curious, because there are so many different metals to think about, and I was just curious which one yours was.
And I think it depends on, once again, I think it depends on where I'm at, because if I'm having that, strength, strong blinders, it's all about steel. If it's, more utilitarian, kind of camouflagey, it's brass, because you've got brass all over the house, you don't ever see it.
Yeah.
It just kind of morphs into its surrounding,
I had a flashback to the 80s, like years of so much brass stuff.
Everything was brass back, everything was made of brass candle is brass candle, everything, incense, brass.
Yeah.
And then of course, bronze is that very in your face reflecting, right? So then you have that, because bronze was prized for mirrors, because the mirrors were made of bronze, but it has that very, I get Lou energy from bronze. I just see, standing on the precipice of a mountain, his hair flowing in the background, and I am Lou, master of all things, that's, to me, that's kind of, bronze is kind of like that, so.
Very cool.
Anyway, I can, that's not what we're talking about, but yeah.
Well, thank you. I learned something new today.
Yeah, I will take you down the rabbit hole of metal on any given day.
Yeah.
Lisa, thank you. Thank
you. This was great.
And I'll have all the links to however you can find Lisa down below, and wherever you're watching this will be down the links, all her stuff. I guess the easiest way would be your website, which is lisawagoner.com. I mean, that's kind of easy, right?
Yeah.
But I'll have your
one-stop shopping.
I'll have your Facebook and Instagram links down there too, because I know some people like one over the other.
Yeah.
And all right, so now we'll end here for everybody else, and then we'll jump over and do the Patreon bit for our back and forth folks. So thanks, everybody.
Bye.